A long while back, I made a video about the Godhead. And somehow, that video did better than I could have ever hoped for. At the same time, I've also learned a lot more about the mythos and coda surrounding the idea of the Godhead since then. But while scrolling through the True STL Discord server, I encountered the word Amaranth, and upon a couple of quick Google searches, found that it piqued my interest greatly. Keenly in the idea that the theory of the Godhead I had presented almost a year ago had so much more to it, that the Godhead was only one part in a massive overarching story about the creation of Mundus and the fate of the entire Elder Scrolls universe. From this, I was able, through the help of a lot of people, understand what exactly the Amaranth is, and how exactly it has affected and may even affect the plot that the Elder Scrolls series has been weaving all these years. Now, before I start, I have to mention that this video will have a lot of my own coda-based headcanon in it, meaning that what I say, and more so what I will theorize, is never to be taken as canon. But if it just so happens that I was right about everything that I say in this video, then I expect 63 million subs by tomorrow! Though, in all seriousness, the topics I'm going to be talking about are out there, and the stuff I will propose will be just as equally, if not crazier. So please, don't go rambling about this on some forum, and enjoy the video. To begin, I'd like to paraphrase the Godhead theory, or as I've been told by many, and even seen in ESO, the Godhead fact. It essentially states that the entire Elder Scrolls universe takes place within the mind of a dreamer, hence the name Godhead. Whatever this dreamer dreams is the universe, and those who realize that they are in the dream, but choose to believe in their own existence, are those who have attained Chim, or Chim, typically through a process known as the Sigic Endeavor. Through Chim, one can change the dream as a vivid dreamer who would change their own dream. However, the vivid dreamer at some point would realize that to be the vivid dreamer, they themselves would in fact have been the Godhead itself within the dream. Meaning that to keep functioning with the immense power that they have attained, they would have to be selfish and choose to never accept the reality of being the Godhead. For if they ever did, then they would lose themselves. This is what it means to be the Amaranth. One who has attained Chim, or divinity, and hence selflessly realized their own truth. That to have such universe-bending powers, they must be the avatar of the Godhead itself, materializing further within the dream. It is because of this that the Amaranth loses all hopes of their own existence, and is rendered empty, becoming the embodiment of the Godhead. Now, this may all seem wild, but in truth, we do have one confirmed Amaranth canonically, from who I've pulled most of the explanation so far. The Amaranth is Anu, the very same Anu responsible for the creation of Aetherius and the subsequent mess that resulted. Anu was the first thing that was dreamed by the Godhead, but for the dream to exist, there had to be something there that didn't exist. The Void. Hence, both Padme, also known as Sithis, and Anu came into existence simply because one was dreamt, and the other existed out of the need for there to be an opposite. With its duality came the existence of a balance, the being known as Nier. And upon the battle that ensued between Padme and Anu, Nier was mortally wounded. From this grief, Anu came to a realization, the very same realization that one with Chim would come to, that he was the dreamer, and through his intense emotions, or rather the sudden deprivation of sense that he felt, Anu became the Amaranth, falling forever into a sleep, hallucinating Aetherius and the subsequent things in it into creation. From this story, we can draw many conclusions. The first being that, as I stated earlier, one must achieve Chim, or some form of divinity to come to the ultimate realization. Whereas disappearing through the Sijic endeavor means you accept that you are a dream. But being selfish and declaring that you are a dreamer within the dream means you achieve Chim. Through this Godhead, one can then come once again to a realization that they are truly just the Godhead projecting themselves further within the dream, or that they are themselves. The first realization leads to the ultimate sacrifice, where the being accepts the truth and becomes the Amaranth, hence creating a new dream within the previous dream as the dreamer. The second, however, allows for a being to be complacent and not become the dreamer, instead keeping whatever they believe to be themselves, and living as they have been up to this point. This, however, produces a paradox, where if someone becomes the new Amaranth, they must wipe out the previous Amaranth in some form, or otherwise cease to exist. What I pose as a solution is that the Amaranth simply exists within the sphere of the previous Amaranth. Take for example how Anu exists within the sphere of the Godhead, meaning that there is the possibility that another Amaranth, or even many Amaranth candidates, already exist, showing us that perhaps any creation of the previous Amaranth can become an Amaranth themselves. It would then make sense for the creation of Mundus to involve the Amaranth in some form. But in no way would it be correct to assume that Lorcan was an Amaranth that created his own universe, as it was much more of a group effort that resulted in the plane's existence. Rather, it would make much more sense that Lorcan created Mundus to allow for the creation of a new Amaranth. As to why, we don't know. However, time and time again, we have seen in Coda that Lorcan has attempted to aid in the creation of those who could achieve Amaranthood. One example of this comes from the Kirkbride work Shor, Son of Shor, in which Shor, the Nordic representation of Lorcan, journeys to the core of the world. There, he meets his father, Shor, father of Shor, who tells him that despite all of the fathers amongst him that Shor creates when the world reaches its doom, that he must not give up, and to rather beat his war drum, for he may perhaps win his struggle someday. The splitting of Shor can be taken for many things. The same goes for the war drum and the war that Shor is fighting. What I believe it to be is the wording of what the repetition of Kalpas means to Shor, and that the beating of the war drum, as well as the struggle that Shor must never give up, as being his attempt at creating one who can break the cycle, someone that can finally become the next Amaranth. Though it is apparent by his many fathers that Shor has failed to create one that could break that cycle many times. This time around, however, we have two potential candidates to be the next Amaranth. The first being Talos and the other Vivec. Talos himself, per the Talos-Lorcan theory, is an aspect of Lorcan, making him a poor choice to be the next Amaranth. As how would the one who created the place for the next Amaranth to be born become the next Amaranth himself? This then leaves us with Vivec, the false god who suddenly left Mundus on the day of his trial in Morrowind. Many people postulate where he had gone, some say that he might have even died. But seeing as he is the only other being with Chim, we can safely assume that he may have left in order to become the next Amaranth. This claim is given heavy support by the 36th canonical and the 37th non-canonical lessons of Vivec. specifically in the idea that Vivec had already made previous attempts to become the Amaranth, with the 36 lessons subtly hinting at the creation of an outside plane of existence that Vec could use to attain Amaranth, while the 37th lesson lays out Vec's motivation in becoming the Amaranth, going so far as to have the final line be, "The worlding of the words is Amaranth." As to where Vivec truly went, no one knows. The true process in becoming Amaranth is still and may forever be shrouded in mystery. But based on the circumstances given earlier, as well as the return of Nerevar in the form of the Nerevarine, and the death of Dagoth that resulted, Vivec probably felt great emotion, enough that perhaps he thought he was on the verge of realization, compelling Vivec to leave his trial, intent on understanding what was happening. But in the process, failing to realize that he had completely misinterpreted the true way of becoming Amaranth. That it was more than simply following the prophecy, but rather depriving oneself of all senses during this, something that Vivec had done the exact opposite of while constructing his extraplanar room. In the end, the idea of the Amaranth boils down to a few core concepts. That is, the idea that the Godhead must be present in some form in all the subsequent worlds that are created within its head, and that, from what we've seen, the existence of the Godhead as the vivid dreamer can only happen to those that have achieved some form of connection with the Godhead, be it through Chim or normal divinity, with the Godhead always creating a new universe within its subsequent birth as the Amaranth in a new part of the dream, allowing for those within the new part of the dream that is created to further create more dreams within dreams, and maybe at some point, an endless cycle of repeating Amaranths in dreams within dreams. Though the full extent of the Amaranth and its connotations are a mystery to us, and many things about its existence will never be found out. For all we know, the Amaranth may be retconned out of existence in the next Elder Scrolls games. But whatever it may be, understanding Michael Kirkbride's works, and hence the Amaranth, are key to understanding the Elder Scrolls as a whole. There are also many things that I simply could not fit within this video, as the full extent of Vivec's part in the story of the Amaranth, and as I consequently found out, the story of the Elder Scrolls universe, are tightly bound together. But Vivec's influence, as well as the ending of the Elder Scrolls narrative, are stories for another time. More specifically, a part 2.
Walk in this bitch, I stay Zoomin. All my saints rock that Gucci. Walk in this bitch, I stay Zoomin. All my seducers rock that green.